Well, hey, Christy, welcome back to another Mentor Mentee video on lesson 8 for my math video that I did. So let's just jump right in. I had some burning questions about how my lesson went. So the first thing was my math terminology. As far as with, I want to make sure that I'm using the right terminology for Eureka Math Squared. So
it's
what did you
different
notice?
than what you've done before, and also I'll say it's tricky. It's a lot of vocabulary, a lot of words. But I want to say first, I think your lesson went really well.
Okay.
I know that was a day where we had a lot going on. Admin was working on some projects and coming in and getting us to check off some things, and you're helping out me with a student check-in, check-out, and some of that happened during that time. So I know there was a lot going on, but you did a really good job making sure that you got your kids to a good point in the lesson before you stepped away and you tried to take care of all the stuff that was going on that day. But one thing I noticed when you had them, you gave them the 9 and the 3 and asked them what can you make with 9 and 3?
Yes.
When we first started addition, we kind of used 9 and 3 as an adding word.
Right.
Because you were putting them together. So they got there, but what you were looking for was what 2 digits can you make with 9 and 3?
Right.
Versus what does 9 and 3 make?
Equal.
So just kind of thinking about the wording of which way you're doing that.
Yeah.
And then when they were working on 25 and you asked them 2 ways to represent 25.
Yes.
We had just worked on, which I actually kind of flipped that up too, because we had just worked on showing 25 as 2 10s and 5 1s, or 1 10 and 15 ones, or 25 ones, that all those are values of 25 shown in different ways.
Right.
Versus 52, right? Which would be a different number. It's not 25 is one number, 52 is another number, right? So 52 is in another way to show 25.
Okay.
And I think one of your kids used the commutative property because, and I think the misconception for that student was the flipping. They know that flipping numbers is the commutative property.
Right.
And my kids will do that too with subtraction, but it's only with add-ins when they switch those numbers.
Okay.
And basically to show it doesn't matter if you have 5 and 3 or 3 and 5, you still have 8.
Right.
Versus the values of those numbers when you switch them in a 2-digit number completely changes the composition of that number.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
And mine do that too with the subtraction. You know how we've been working on fact families and some of the fluency?
Yes.
And working on, I'm showing them that they can read it backwards to check their math because they know the addition facts better than the subtraction facts. So talking about, they're that is the commutative property. I'm but it's fact families because those 3 numbers work in the number bond, but it can't be the commutative property unless it's addition. It can also be multiplication, but since we don't do that just for them, it has to be an add-in, which is then another terminology.
Right.
But I think they got what you were trying to show them, and understanding 10s and 1s was very strong.
Okay.
And that was good that you had done that in your fluency at the beginning, working on that and making the next 10 and understanding 10s versus 1s.
Okay. Yep.
So I thought that was good.
Okay.
And I like how you had them come up and draw their representations to show the difference of 25 versus 52.
Okay.
They all did it independently, and then you called students up to share their thinking. Okay. And they represented it in different ways.
Okay.
Which is good because we've talked about the different ways of representing it. We draw the 6, we can draw, the 10 with the circle, the 1 with the circle, the squares, all those different things, the 10 sticks we did with measurement. So I thought that was good that they showed it in different ways. To show there's more than one way to solve a math problem, right?
Okay.
And it was evident that they still understood the concept and they were able to compare the numbers. And then I thought it was great how you switched and put the 52 first, so they could see how that symbol changed when you have to make the symbol match the order of the numbers, right?
Yes.
And then when they went to work together and their partners, they went seamlessly. They knew what they were doing. They knew how to get into all of that. And then one of them asked, I don't think they had started working yet, but was asking, but what happens if they are roll both of them as the same number.
Right.
And rather than just telling them that that's equal, you talked them through that scaffold to get them to the equals, because we have worked on that.
Yes.
So I thought that was really strong, that you didn't just be like, oh, it's equals.
Right.
You helped scaffold them to get to that.
Okay.
Since equals wasn't reviewed in the lesson, because it wasn't,
Right.
because we were talking about using the place value to compare the numbers. We weren't necessarily doing equal, but that could have happened with the dice roll.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I really thought overall it was a great lesson. The kids understood the concept. They understood how to look at those place value.
Okay.
That you look at the tens, and then you would move to the ones if the tens were equal.
Okay.
And they could represent it. They understood that, which was the purpose of that lesson. So I felt like that was really strong.
So when you are like when we're, say for instance, if we're doing the launch or the learning in Eureka Math, like what is the time frame that you would give students to have that think time before you ask a student to show their work on the board? Or how many students would you call? Because that was like some of the feedback that my instructor gave me, like giving them more time to I guess to have that think time, that productive struggle, or how many students would you call?
I think it depends on the lesson and how, if you think about how like we kind of introduce it, and then like by like now from where we taught that lesson, it's a lot like they're more fluent with it, right? So they do it quicker because they understand what they're doing. So I think it depends on whether it's an introductory lesson or a lesson where we're like moving farther, where we're moving farther into it. But also like you can judge, because I know like when you're filming, but I know you also do a lot of walking around, because I've been in here during lessons. You can kind of monitor, are they ready to move, or do they need more time?
Okay.
So you kind of make that, I feel like you're pretty good at that, especially when we've worked on other things.
Right.
That you can see, okay, they've all pretty much got it. Let's go. And you're walking around and helping the ones that need that extra little bit of support.
Okay.
So I really think it just depends on the lesson and how your class is doing. If they need, and sometimes like I can see that this is not working, they're really struggling as a whole, let's stop. And I go back to the drawing board and we do it again together.
Right.
Then I release it again.
Okay.
If you can see that there's nothing, just, okay, let's just stop.
Yeah.
And then we'll start again.
Yes.
And I think like that's fine. You just have to make that judgment call.
Okay.
But I don't know that there's like a set like count to 30 and then you're done. You know what I mean? You just kind of have to look at your kids
and see
how they're grasping the concept. Think about always keep the purpose and the main point of the lesson at the forefront.
Okay. I think that
was that.
Yep, that was the main thing.
Yep.
Just making sure that the terminology matched what the instruction of what the kids need
and
to
sometimes have. Like I know it's like I say it wrong and the kids are like, that's not what you said. And I'm like, but in my head, that's what I said.
Yeah.
So you don't even realize you're saying it wrong, right?
Right.
And I think they understood what the purpose was. I don't think it confused them, and I don't think it took away from their understanding of the lesson.
Right. But then that also, in the back of my mind, I know it's going to come up again. So then that's where that correction to clear up that misconception.
Yeah.
No, that's not what it is. This is what we have to do.
And they as first graders love to use those big words like commutative property. And they've heard it, which I kind of call that like use and confuse. Like they know it, they're familiar with it.
Right.
They know it means switching around, but they don't quite have the grasp of it's only an add and an addition equation, right?
Yes.
So that's kind of like new to them, and they're like trying to be mathematicians, saying these big fancy words that they know connect to math. Exactly. So I mean, that's just part of the learning process.
Okay.
But overall, great lesson.
All right. Yep. I thank you so much, Christy. So until the next time, we will